I want to let our listeners know that there's a way that you can help support our organization. If you go to our website at www.thisisfailingjustice.com, scroll all the way to the bottom of the homepage, and there you're going to find a donation link. Any amount you can donate will help us further our mission and reach more people. We believe it's really important to keep spreading the word about the issues that are plaguing our criminal justice system and how we can make it better. It is crucial to keep fighting for the change, and with your support, we can do just that.
This is Failing Justice.
Good evening, Failing Justice audience. My name is Justin Carlson. I am your host, as always. Thank you for joining in on the podcast tonight. I want to welcome each and every one of you here. As always, I'm very glad and thankful that you are here. Tonight, we're just kind of going to jump right into the show. I've got my buddy with me, as you remember him from last week, Preston Green. What's up, man?
Hey, man. How's it going?
Good, brother. Thanks for coming back on the show tonight. It's always, like I said last week, it's always fun to be able to sit there and have conversation with my buddy because we talk like we conversate all the time, but being able to bring our conversation on camera, I feel like it's beneficial to those that are watching and listening. So anyway, again, like I said, I just want to kind of jump right into the show. Last week, I wanted to kind of touch a little bit on the things going on in the Middle East right now, and in Israel. We didn't really get time to do that, and so I don't want to spend too much time on it unless you live under a rock. I mean, you know, then you don't know what's going on. But right now, there's just a lot of turmoil, violence, a lot of fear and unknown things going on in Israel right now. And I think it's the reason I want to talk about, like, why are you talking about that on this podcast? I mean, I think it's very relevant to a lot of things. And just to also talk about the severity of the situation and just how serious it is over there. My dad's a preacher, and growing up, I heard a lot about, Israel and prophecy and things that, things that are to come over there. And, as a kid, you just kind of really and truly, it's just in one ear and out the other. And I was telling Preston the other day, I was like, man, like, sometimes I kind of wish I would have paid more attention to what was being said and taught. But I do know some key things, some real key things. And right now, there is no doubt that the prophetic scripture is unfolding just kind of right here in front of us. It talks about the Gog and Magog conflict, which is Iran and Russia, and it talks about it if you look up the book of Ezekiel 38 and 39, it talks a lot about those things, and Israel is just being attacked right now from all sides, which is what Scripture also says. Scripture says that everyone will come against Israel, and as of today, when I woke up this morning, it says Iran had threatened Israel with preemptive action if they continue to their invasion into Gaza. And so, and in my opinion, with Israel being attacked from all sides, you had Hamas come in, and Hamas to that music festival, they paraglided in, and they killed hundreds of people. Just absolute barbaric violence for no other reason at all. And I'll tell you what the reason is. The reason is they're Jews, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to, is the fact that these people are Jewish, and that is why, like, it's not about claiming land or whatever the case may be. It's literally about killing Jews. I mean,
so I don't, I grew up in a religious household, but I can't sit here and talk like I know all the details about, the biblical history of it.
Yeah.
I just do know that there's always been that tension, and it goes back to, hundreds of years ago. So, it's just kind of a sad time right now. Cause that's all we're seeing in, social media, the news, just a lot of violence.
Well, here's my thing. Like, even if somebody has no clue what's going on, say they have no understanding, of what's taking place over there or what's in the Bible or whatever the case may be, I think we can all sit here and agree, put all that to aside for just a moment and look at what happened, right? So there was a terrible, unprovoked, god-awful attack, in Israel on their people. And the problem is a lot of people are sitting back and saying, well, I don't think, Israel should, and that's what Iran was saying today. Like, that was their threat. Like,
yeah.
Hey, if you don't, if you don't cease and desist, then there's going to be consequences from our country. And my thing is, like, forget everything else. Look what happened. Look at those guys that came in, killed, 200-300 people, whatever it was, just in that, in that particular incident. And Israel's supposed to do nothing about it, right? But it didn't stop there. It didn't stop there. Like, they continued, all these other attacks with these rockets. I think there's somewhere in upwards of 1,400 people that died. I think there's 30 something Americans that are dead, 13 that are missing. And like, these people have taken capture, Hamas has taken capture, all these hostages in Gaza, and they're not, they're using them as human shields. Like, they're not letting them leave, because Israel has come in and said, hey, they've dropped all those pamphlets over the weekend. They were like, hey, like,
get out,
shift out of here. Well, I think a lot of the people that don't understand, and it all just depends on what you're looking at, what you're reading, what news station you're watching too, right?
That's the problem.
Yeah, like, if you're watching one news station over the other, it depends on what kind of propaganda they're trying to spin. But the fact of the matter is, Hamas is not and I agree, the Palestinian people overall, there's probably a lot of good people there, right? So I don't think they claim each other. Like, Hamas is not, I don't think it's the majority of the Palestinian people. They're a freaking terrorist organization is what they are.
Yeah. I would like to believe and do think that a majority of humans are not evil people, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're good people. So that does present a challenge on, just the different narratives, and we're seeing a lot of them. We're seeing a lot of support for both sides here in our own country. So,
yeah, I think that. Sorry, somebody told me to turn your mic up a little bit. I think what's going on too, man, is no matter how you look at the situation, because over the weekend there was a bunch of guys or people in general that were just you might have to pull that a little closer. There were a lot of people that were protesting in the street here in Dallas, and and really all over the nation, and they had Palestinian flags up, and they were saying things like free Palestine, and it's like, I don't understand that. Like, where are these people getting the information? Did they not see Israel has every right to defend themselves? Did they not see the violence that occurred? And it's really just a nasty situation, if we're being honest. Like,
Well, that's the thing about, like, I mean, war. There's always two sides, two different stories.
yeah,
You know, the arguments that I've heard from the other side, in defense of Hamas, or, is that they're, reclaiming, and that Israel has done the same thing to them multiple times in the past. So I don't know. It's just hard to believe multiple narratives these days.
yeah.
You don't know. You don't know if you're being told the truth.
Well, that's the thing. I was seeing where a bunch of, like, if you scroll TikTok's like, there's so much propaganda and crap on TikTok. It's unbelievable. Like, you scroll through there and you just see, like, I don't understand where these people really get their information from. But, if you're getting your news from TikTok and individuals, you're not vetting it out. I feel like, that's kind of a problem. And in today's generation, that's where a lot of people are getting their news from. They don't understand truly the history that is there. And as far as our own country goes, Joe Biden has come out and said that we back Israel. Joe Biden's supposed to be going to Israel tomorrow, which I think is pretty crazy. I mean, that really kind of blows my mind that he's going out there. But the FBI has already warned. I mean, they've come out publicly and said, hey, be vigilant, be aware, because we don't know who is in our country right now, who may carry out some of these attacks. And that just kind of blows my mind, because you have the southern border that's just wide open. And as of this month, I know there was 4 Iranian nationals who've been caught that were just this month alone. Before, I think it was like 80. But as of this month, there was 4 Iranian nationals who were caught at the southern border here in Texas that were on the terror watch list, that were known to be on the terror watch list. And so that's what happens when you have poor policies of keeping the border wide open, because who knows who in the world is in our country right now that is just waiting to carry out an attack here. And when the FBI comes out and says, hey, you guys should be aware and be vigilant, I mean, I feel like that's kind of a problem. Something else that I thought about too was all of this stuff going on. Like, obviously it's real, it's here, it's right in front of our faces, it's present. But I feel like there are those in our government that could use it as a distraction for who knows what else, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of the problems with the news in general, all the narratives that are getting spun. We seem to be living in a time where the agenda is to put fear in everybody, because if you just constantly scare everyone or make them fear the unknown, then it's kind of hard for them to realize what's actually going on. So, I think there's always an agenda,
Yeah.
So,
No, I think so too. It's just, there is a lot of fear right now. Like I said earlier, I mean, there's just a lot of unknown things going on right now. And, one of the big questions, which was denied, they're saying, Joe Biden gave Iran, $6 billion, which if you go back several years before, there was the Iran deal where Obama gave them pallets of money. And what Joe Biden is saying is that, these funds didn't, had nothing to do with the attack on Israel. And I mean, of course, I think if that came out, I'd probably say the same thing. But there are receipts to the fact that Iran has funded Hezbollah. And I mean, that is facts. They have given them money. And, Hezbollah right now is launching rockets and into Israel. And, man, it's just a crazy time. And you can't, there's fear. You literally can't trust our government. We can't. It's a disaster. And then we have an election coming up. I mean, that's in anybody's hands right now too. Like,
Well, I mean, let's just start with the fact that we can't seem to elect a Speaker of the House right now. So,
yeah, I don't know. As of this afternoon, I probably about 2:00 or so was the last time I updated on that, and they still hadn't done anything as of that.
I think they're done till tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's
and that's another thing. I mean, they're also, I mean, that's kind of halted. Certain decisions can't be made without that. So, really just an overall crazy time and being a Christian guy, and I'm not, a lot of people say, I'm a Christian. I never said I was the greatest Christian in the world, but I am a Christian. And so the fact of the matter is the only thing that you can really do in this situation is just pray. I'll be quite honest with you. Everybody that keeps saying peace and stop. I don't think there's any stopping where we are right now as far as what's going on over there.
No.
I think Israel is fed up. They've showed restraint for a long time, and I think at this point they're full throttle ahead. But here's my thing too: if you don't know anything about the situation and you're looking in, who's warning who? Like, hey, get out. This is a bad area to be in. Like, Hamas, the barbaric terrorists, they're not. I mean, they're not warning anybody. So, only thing I can say is do your due diligence, do your research, talk to somebody that kind of knows a little bit about the history and the things that are going on over there, and just pray for those people. I mean, honestly, that's all we can do. I hate that this is going on, but also as a believer, I feel like these things are just lined right up, literally, with what the Bible talks about.
Yeah,
and my condolences go out to those people, and all we can do is pray about it and keep an eye on it. So, but moving on here, I want to go to our next topic here. It's this is an officer. This has kind of been an ongoing deal. I've been following it, but it just resurfaced this week because of an indictment. But so what I want to do is I want to play this video. I want to give you a quick backstory. Well, actually, let me play the video first, and then after I play the video, then I'll give you guys the story.
I want some masses on.
What happened after that request that led to an NYPD officer facing charges? Good evening, I'm Dick Brennan.
And I'm Dana Tyler. That officer pleaded not guilty during an arraignment today.
He's accused of repeatedly punching a man while responding to a call last December about an emotionally disturbed child in Harlem. CBS 2's Alice Gaynor has the story.
Police body camera footage from December 7th, 2022 shows Jerome Collins asking officers repeatedly to put on a mask inside his apartment.
Can we get some masses on?
Relax, man, relax.
Nah, I want some masses on.
I'll wear a mask. It's fine.
All right, if you're not wearing no mask, please step back.
For about 10 minutes, he continues to ask.
My son is in here. I'm just asking y'all if it's possible that y'all could put your mask on.
Police were there after Collins' girlfriend called 911 about her autistic teen son being aggressive.
So we can't get no masks?
No.
Collins calls 911.
And I don't want my son getting sick, so I'm asking the officer, and he's not doing it. I got matches right here.
No, not right now.
I want to make sure he's all right. Stop touching me. Stop doing that. Don't touch me no more.
Don't put your hands on me.
All right, you touching me, and I asked you to put a mask on.
Bro, you interfering with the process. You're gonna end up under arrest too, all right? Back up, get out that space.
Back up.
Collins was punched 13 times with a closed fist.
My eye was swollen for weeks. My jaw was swollen for weeks. I couldn't eat.
It all happened in front of his 8-year-old son.
Now when he see cops, he just don't want me to get punched or pummeled, but he's so afraid.
NYPD officer Christian Zapata, then a sergeant, now demoted to officer, was indicted on 1 count of assault in the 3rd degree and arraigned Wednesday morning. The 12-year veteran of the force has been suspended without pay. He said in statements to police after, "I was protecting my guys. He was going at one of my guys."
And when he pushed me, I tried to guide his head away. I pushed it down, said, "Hey, stop pushing me." And when I did that, I put my hands up to show like it's no threat.
In a letter to the NYPD commissioner, Zapata wrote, "I understand the #1 goal of policing is always de-escalation. Like you, I have worked very hard to attain my rank, and it would be a tragedy for it to be stripped."
He deserved everything stripped from him.
Alice Gaynor, CBS 2 News.
And he was initially charged, arrested, and the Manhattan DA declined to prosecute. The DA says his office will continue to impartially investigate instances where members of law enforcement use unnecessary force.
All right, so it's pretty crazy, right? I mean, backstory to that. Police get called because, and this happened back in December or January. But like I said, I've been following it. It just resurfaced this last week because they initially declined to indict this guy, Officer Zapata from NYPD. They initially declined to prosecute him, which I was kind of, I was initially baffled. I was like, what? Why aren't we prosecuting? But anyway, they come out earlier at the end of last week, and they said, "Hey, we are gonna prosecute him, indict him on 1 count of assault." But what happened was they got called out there. I think the mom ended up calling because they had a kid. Their son was kind of mentally disturbed. Something was going on, so they called the police. And when the police got there, they were like, "Hey, will you put a mask on before you come in?" I think there were some people that were sick, and they didn't want to get anybody else sick, and the officers were kind of refusing to put the mask on before they came in. And the guy's like, "Look, I just, please." He even handed them, looked like packages of brand new masks. He was like, "Hey, can you put these on?" And they still refused. So then you can see Zapata sit there, and he's like, "Hey, you're interfering with what we're doing. If you don't back up, you're gonna, we're going to arrest you," the typical cop threat, so, which just kind of side note, in my opinion, when it comes to this, they called them like, "Hey, can you come help us? Because our son is, he's got some mental illness going on right now, and we, he's kind of acting out. We need you to come help us." And, so the next thing you know, he's getting threatened to be arrested in his own freaking house, simply because he's trying to protect his kids or whatever against sickness. So then the officers kind of push in at that point, and when they push him, I mean, human instinct, I think, for him was to kind of push their arms out of the way. And then at that point, all hell broke loose. I mean, you see in the video, that dude just gave him a full-on street beatdown.
Yeah.
Just punching him over and over in the face. Rearing his fist back and just landing face blows. Now, I didn't say if they ended up, I don't know if they ended up, it didn't say, but I don't think they ended up arresting the dad. But so, Zapata was then a sergeant, but then he got demoted to an officer. Again, all this time, the last 10 months or so, he's been on suspension without pay. I don't know why in the world something like that would take so long, because the DA refused to prosecute, but now they're going to prosecute. So I'm sure, he'll eventually be terminated. But rightfully so. I mean, what was your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a beat down,
to say the least.
Situations like this it's always difficult to, I mean, I think even just for myself, a majority of the cops, I think it's something that we have to work at getting better at is, it's uncomfortable to sit here in Monday morning quarterback because that's what we were always told not to do, right? So, but I
mean, I think you have to.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm getting at is like there does come a time where we have to recognize when somebody's, not handling situation the right way or is, I think that was a little excessive of force there. I mean, he was rearing back.
Yeah.
So, really to evaluate the whole situation, it would be good to, I listened to the initial call when they called into dispatch, what they were saying, knowing all the details surrounding prior to their arrival. But I will say that, I don't know just put the mask on. Because our job is not to get there and escalate the situation or make it worse, right? So I definitely, I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it seems like that's what they were being asked to do something. They didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
That's plain and simple. That's what it appeared to me.
Well, you used the word de-escalate, which de-escalation training within NYPD is in full effect now as of 2021. And let me play this next clip because this kind of explains how serious they're taking it or should be taking it.
The NYPD is training all 35,000 of its officers on de-escalation tactics. This program is called ICAT, Integrating Communications Assessment and Tactics. They hope to use the training to help shut down volatile situations without using violence. Police Commissioner Dermot Shea talked about the importance of teaching officers to manage crisis situations while also working to keep the community safe.
Sound tactics keeps everyone safe. From our police officers, but just as importantly, to the people we serve. ICAT training enhances our efforts to always try to resolve potentially volatile situations, hopefully without any use of force.
Training has already been used for city workers and emergency services.
So, they have de-escalation training. They're specifically in NYPD. Now, interesting what he said is, to hopefully prevent use of force and any kind of injury to officers or people they encounter. And so my thing is failure, right?
Yeah.
And I get it. Like you said, Monday morning quarterback, and I've already received, people send me things, and that was one of the things I got one time was, all you're sitting there doing is Monday morning quarterback, and I'm like, how many situations I've been in when I've been highly pissed off, and my ego just wanted to flare up and just you got to keep it in check, right? And I have no problem sitting back and watching videos like this and saying complete and utter failure, absolute. That dude, emotions were high and suddenly, he wasn't getting what he wanted. Like he thought, hey, I'm the police. I'm going to do what I want to do. And he had somebody in front of him putting him in check. And that's really what it boils down to. Is the guy was pissed off and emotions were high, and he just lost all emotional intelligence whatsoever when it came to that, and just gave that dude a straight beat down.
Yeah, I mean, definitely wouldn't disagree with what you see there. I mean, I didn't see anything to call for that.
Yeah,
the use of force was a bit excessive there.
And de-escalation training. Go ahead. Sorry.
And I'm trying to think. Like I went to the academy in 2016, and we had de-escalation training. So so 2021 was when they first introduced this, and the largest police department.
Yeah,
that doesn't make.
Well, and I mean that goes back to kind of after doing my research as of 2021, because I couldn't find a stat that was after 2021. So year and a half, 2 years ago was the most recent stat I could find. But it said at that point in 2021, there are more than 20 states in the U.S. that like they don't have any kind of de-escalation. It doesn't sound right.
That doesn't sound.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that is possible.
Well, Texas didn't put theirs in until 2017. As far as like a mandated.
Yeah, but I saw.
So I think
surely they teach that in the academy in other states.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe they've briefly touched on it.
Yeah,
because I pulled the TCOL, Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. I pulled their, because we were talking about it the other day. You're talking about pulling like what they teach in the academy, 720 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember, man. Like, obviously, it wasn't extremely significant during my academy back in 2010 because I think it's always been hinted on in the academy, like just real brief, quick, and in a hurry. Like, hey, try to de-escalate, try to calm things down. But never did we spend, I don't think, any significant amount of time that I can remember back in 2010. And you said you went in 16, so I don't know what you guys had exactly then in 16, but
yeah, it was definitely a part of it. I can't tell you how much time we actually spent on it, but I mean, I think that's another major issue that we're facing right now. I always had a chief I used to work for. He'd always have this saying. He said, well, there's three things we don't do well in law enforcement. We don't drive well, we don't shoot well, and we don't write well. Those were his big focus when it came to training. I would be inclined to add that we do not conversate well whatsoever. So, I mean, our ability to, de-escalate things just by using our words seems to be something that we struggle with. And I think a lot of it has to do with, like you said, ego.
I honestly think that's like to me, that's the number one thing that comes to mind it's like we talked about last week. They teach you from the start, like, you are the police. You're in charge of that scene. What you say goes. How many times was that drilled into your head in the academy? And so, to me, looking at this video, and again, like I say, I don't want to pick on that guy. I mean, I kind of do because that was absurd. But at the same time, it's like I've been pissed off at a scene where something's not going the way I want it to go. Maybe it's not necessarily like written down anywhere in law what I'm thinking,
Right.
you know, but I've been in that situation where I've been really pissed off. Now, I've never just gave anybody a street beat down like that, but
I would hope not.
Yeah, I mean, and so I get it, man, but that's the number one thing that comes to my mind is ego.
Yeah. Definitely ego, but I think it goes back to, you know, maybe ego that's been deeply rooted into the culture. So it's just like, that's what we're teaching now. You know, is like, that's, maybe we're inserting that mentality into the culture when it's not needed. It goes back to kind of what I was talking about last week as far as like, you know, I think it's crucial that the moment a new officer out of the academy is introduced to this field, you know, you put them with the right person. Because what if that guy was training somebody that day? What if he had, you know, a brand new recruit out of the academy first day on the job, and that's what they got introduced to?
Yeah.
Yes. It's concerning.
And another thing that tripped me out about that video, if you watch there at the end, it said the guy wrote in his letter, I guess, statement or whatever, and he said, I understand de-escalation is part of, you know, essential parts of the job. I don't know what the context was behind that.
Oh, the officer?
Yeah, I'm like,
yeah.
Do you though? Like, because I mean, if you understood it, you definitely didn't implement it. And then another thing, he was kind of disturbing, and two things. One, if you look at him in that video, he just looks as he's walking out of court, you know, he just looks real crass, like just real like disconnected, you know, kind of like I shouldn't be here right now. And then also it said in his statement too, they highlighted it was he was explaining to the commissioner, like, just like you, I've worked real hard for my rank, and you know, I wouldn't want that stripped away from me.
Entitlement.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's what you're concerned about right now?
Yeah.
You know, your rank?
I think that contributes to the toxic environment or, you know, workplace that we currently have going on. It seems like the thing to do to get ahead is to bring the person above you down. I mean, that's just this repetitive behavior that we do, and it's just this obsession with rank. And now, don't get me wrong, I think there's a time and place. Rank is important. Your position in organization is important. But yeah, I mean, a statement like that is, to me, it comes off very entitled. Like, just because you work for it doesn't mean that you can't get it taken away. Doesn't mean it's permanent. Because you earned it once doesn't mean you stop, right?
Yeah.
Like, you earned your position of leadership doesn't mean you have to stop leading.
Yeah, and my thing is too, going back to just, I mean, it gets talked about all the time because I don't think you can talk about it enough, is the public's perception, right? So I'm sure that, I mean, that was obviously a New York City news station, so that's all over the news. So you see that community, that like that guy's neighbors in Harlem, which is where it was, there in New York City, and going back to the public's trust, like how in the heck, how do you overcome something like that? You know, when that's just what you're seeing just day in and day out. And like that guy, that guy, like he called the police for help, right? Like him and his family chose to pick up the phone because they couldn't handle the situation. And they were like, hey, we need you guys to come intervene and handle it because you have the expertise or should have the expertise to handle it. And then they show up and they handle it by, just beating the dude down right there in his, freaking entryway to his house. So I say all that to say, like, how do we recover from that?
That seems to be a recurring issue. If you're working in this profession right now, you got to understand that if something goes wrong, you best believe it's going to end up on the news, social media. Somebody's going to be recording it. You've got a body camera on, and it is hard. You talk about building that trust. Another thing I find concerning about this is that it's taken till now until the prosecutor decided they wanted to do something about it. So you have this come out, people see this, they see that there was an issue, the community has a problem with it, and then it's, over a year before anybody does anything to say, hey, we got it wrong, we messed up. One of the first steps to build that trust is you just got to own it. When we're in the wrong, we got to own it. Say, hey, yeah, that's not what we stand for. That's not what we're trying to do here. You got to go out there and fall on your sword. You got to be vulnerable. And I think in certain circumstances we're getting a little better at that, but this wasn't one. I'd be concerned, living there if the people who put us in those positions, I'm kind of thinking on the DA side, the community put those prosecutors in those positions, and then they don't do anything when they're saying, hey, we got these issues. So
yeah, what it was, Alvin Bragg was too busy
prosecuting Donald Trump.
That that's what that was about, man. But yeah, I agree with you, dude. You just got to wonder, like, why was that? I don't know why it took 10 months. I'm curious, like, was the dude getting paid for 10 months just chilling?
It's probably a union environment, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So
a lot of red tape.
Yeah, even him still being employed or receiving pay, that doesn't surprise me at all with it being a union environment. I would think that's probably routine, but I'd have to look into that.
So Texas, I want to pop this up here. This is straight from the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement curriculum that they have, that they teach. It's an 8-hour mandate. So if you have a basic, like if you're in the police academy and you're chasing a basic certificate or maintaining a basic certificate or chasing an intermediate certificate or chasing an advanced certificate, you are required, at least in this state, to undergo 8 hours of de-escalation training. And I pulled this right out of the curriculum in the instructor's handbook. Try to pull it up here, make sure. Okay, so it says here in the introduction, I highlighted it, explain the purpose. The introduction is to explain the purpose and focus of a de-escalation training to improve the response of officers to incidents that involve persons in crisis who are behaving erratically emphasizing that public and officer safety are at the heart of this training process. And then you scroll down to describe the key principles of the critical decision-making model. And the first thing is police ethics. That I highlighted. And so, again, I know this guy was, I understand this guy was in New York, but, you know, I wanted to bring this up because I find it interesting that it says police ethics, right? Is that obviously I feel like that obviously that exists with some people, but would you consider a person to have ethics that would do what that guy did in that video? I mean,
yeah, it's definitely. I mean, I'll just be honest. I think that's a battle we're facing across the board. That's one of the issues is lacking moral ethics and integrity.
Yeah.
So, nah, it's, you know, that's another thing too with these training programs, man. It's just 9 times out of 10, I don't know. It's
who writes this stuff?
I don't know.
I'm curious who writes this crap.
Well, and then it's also this mandated stuff, right? So, like, we have an event, we're in the wrong, we
bust out some training.
Legislature goes down to Austin and says, "Well, we're going to fix this by," man, I can't forget how long ago it was. It was probably 8 months ago or something. You know, there was AOC put out a tweet. Now, I'm not saying I agree with her political policies, right? But the context of the tweet actually was pretty good, and it was basically, you know, it was after an event, pretty major event had happened. The context of the tweet was like, well, when are things going to change? We've mandated training, we've added funding, we've, you know, mandated body cameras, and we're still having these issues. So I feel like a lot of it's, you know, a lot of these things, sometimes even the training is just this fluff that we throw at it, put a Band-Aid on it, and we're not getting down to the root cause of what's causing the problem. And I think that's where we have to start looking within, looking inside the organizations, looking at the culture, looking at the leadership, because I guarantee you this is probably not the first time this officer's reacted that way.
Probably not.
It's probably just the first time that attention's brought to it. So, you know, that falls back on poor accountability and leadership. That we're not saying anything. We're not speaking up when we see something wrong. It's an ongoing issue.
Well, I told you about this, and I'm going to be quite cautious in not saying names at the moment. But, you know, when I came back into the profession, I was on a call with a group of people, not at my agency. They were in my town doing something completely different. And one of the things was, like, it was a specialized group of people. You know, they were specialized in, like, hunting fugitives. I can't remember what the heck they were, to be honest with you, but they were out there trying to be cool, you know. And we went to this house because they were looking for somebody. We had to assist, went out there. The guy, there was like 4 or 5 different people living in this house. And, one of the occupants of that house was like, and it was a meth house, you know, these people were, you know, they weren't the greatest upstanding citizens, but
define a meth house.
Why you put me on the spot like that? You just selling meth, slinging meth out of the house, you know?
Suspected of criminal activity.
Criminal activity, yeah. So dope house, you know, dope.
Define a dope house. Man, that's another thing I hate.
Yeah. So they were there because somebody was wanted. The house, you know, was known for dealing narcotics, however you want me to word it. And one of the occupants was like, "Hey, so and so's not here. You know, that's his bedroom over there, but he's not here." And the guy, the cop was like, "Are you sure about that?" And I'm sitting here listening to this exchange. I'm sitting, you know, I'm probably a month or less than a month back in after 2 years. And I'm just sitting here watching this, and the guy's like, "You sure he's not in there?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm positive he's not in there." And you look over at the dude's door, and he's got like 15 padlocks on it, a combination code. Like, I mean, it is like Fort Knox on that room. And that's obviously indicative to when you live in environments like that. Like,
that's suspicious.
Yeah, I mean, it says a lot, but who cares, right? The dude wasn't there. His room's locked up. The other occupant's like, he's not in there. And the cop just kept going back and forth, I don't believe you. I think he's in there. And I'm just like, in my mind, I hadn't said anything yet, but I'm like, what makes you think he's in there, right? And so then this cop looks over at another cop in the same unit, like they're together. And he's like, "You think he's in there?" He goes, "Yeah, I think he's in there. I think he's in there. We need to check." And I'm just sitting here, and the guy's like, "Well, I got the key, right? But like, what grounds do you have to open these locks?" He says, "Well, I just think he's in there. I need to see the key." And so, like, out loud, they are trying to create something to make it justified and okay that they're about to violate somebody's Fourth Amendment and go in this room. There was no grounds to think the dude was there. And I'm just sitting there like, yeah. And so finally I said something. I was like, I don't think we can do that. Like, he's saying that he's not here. We have no indication that the guy is in there. I feel like we're not supposed to go in there. And he's like, "No, I think he's in there. I really do." And he's like, "Yeah, me too. I was like, all right. So, they went over there. I walked out the house because that was their scene. I was just there to make sure nobody got shot. And they sure enough opened the door and went in there, and the guy wasn't there, right? But the fruit of the poisonous tree, first and foremost, before we even get to the fruit of the poisonous tree, like, that was wrong. That was not okay. I don't care if I don't care what the circumstances were. I think the guy was wanted for, it was a felony something or another. I can't remember, but they basically just strong arm that other occupant to open that door. And they go in there and he's not in there. And I'm just like, this is absurd. Like, this is what happens. I mean, these are real things. I'm back in law enforcement. I already have a bad taste in my mouth. And then boom, this happens right in front of me. And I'm just like, and just think, man, like, how disheartening that is of how much of that really goes on. I mean, I know it goes on all the time, every day. And not everybody's that way. I don't want to generalize all of us, because clearly not everybody's that way, but I'm just sitting here like, that's a problem, man. And I can't remember why I got on that story. The story was so long, and I totally forgot what I was basing that on. But to me, man, that's just ethics, right? Police ethics.
Yeah, kind of how we, it seems like we're at a spot where we're repeating the same behavior over and over and over again. I guess expecting a different result at some point, but we're not going to get it. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's because don't get me wrong, like I think you got the spirit of the law and you got the letter of the law.
Yeah.
Right. And, basically that's officer discretion. There's certain things that you can't mess with. My opinion, one being people's, constitutional rights. But I am a firm believer that there is a time and place to operate in the spirit of the law.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you what those circumstances are.
Well, it's like you said last week.
And should be.
Not everything's the same, dude.
Yeah.
You could come out here tonight and approach a drunk driving call on this side of town, and the circumstances be completely different than the one you're going to face at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on the other side of town 7, 8 hours later. Like, we
had it out about that one time.
We did, yeah.
About them DWIs.
We did, man.
And I don't think that just because you handle one situation one way or in another situation completely different, that you're necessarily in the wrong, right? I think that the intent of the law should be to use it. It's like a tool. You've got all these different violations, but it doesn't mean that you got to use them all. They're there for a reason, and the intent should be use it as it applies. We talk about justice. I think if I'm in a situation seeking justice, somebody has harmed me or mine, and I want justice for me or mine, my version of justice is going to be different than yours. I think that's why it's important for us to sit and listen, take all the facts into consideration, and then we act. Then we determine what the best course of action will be. And it's not the same thing every time. The situation you gave is a little different, but it goes back to ethics. I don't think you're unethical or don't have integrity if you're using the spirit of the law in a beneficial way for that person who's seeking your help, right? And that's hard.
It's hard because
there's no set standard.
No.
There's no like, okay, so if you want to use the spirit of the law, this is what you do, A, B, C, D. Because it's not like that at all. And you have to understand, this is what I tell people. This is, I go on and on about this with my partners that I work with on the street. Sometimes you just have to make a decision, even if it's wrong. But as long as it's not unethical, immoral, or illegal, then I'll support you, right? Yeah. If you're doing it for the right reasons. And that's not, it's not going to be the same across the board for every situation you come into. That's the difficult part of this job, I think.
It is, and then the other thing is you have, you mentioned that argument that we had. We had a call, and you mentioned, we got into it after the fact because we disagreed. And the thing is, like, how you would handle a situation isn't always how I would handle a situation. How I would handle a situation is how you would handle, and all the other, 200,000 cops, however many cops are out here, like, but I think you got to start somewhere, right? So I think you start with the training, and I don't mean just black and white. There's got to be curriculum. There's got to be, there's got to be CYA. There's got to be things in writing that you put up there. That way you can say, hey, we did this. But, it's like I said last week, it goes back to you have these 20, 30-year vets who are just burnt out, who have been doing crap wrong for years, and then they go to these academies and they teach. They read the black and white, right, because they have to, but then eventually they put the cursor down, they put the pointer down on the table, and they start talking.
Let me tell you how it really is.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, what you just described, as long as it's not immoral, unethical, or illegal, but in your heart of hearts, you're doing it for the right reason, for the right benefit of the people that you're dealing with, it's crazy, man, because there's so many decisions that you have to go out there and that you have to make.
It's difficult. And
you're going to be, damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing in a lot of situations. Not all situations. I mean, some situations are just straight up black and white. Like,
straight up.
This is how it is, right?
Yeah.
But then there are so many of situations that are not.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've gotten to a point where we do so much to prevent liability.
Yeah.
I mean, even training. I mean, if we're having to implement all this stuff after something's happened, I mean, that's kind of your first sign that we weren't doing it right in the first place. I mean, training will most definitely help, but it needs to be for the right reasons, and training just geared towards preventing liability, it isn't going to do that. Things like we see when we see incidents where there's an excessive use of force, violating people's rights. Sometimes it really boils down to, like, you picked the wrong person to be in this line of work. Like, we made the wrong judgment call. Because I do think that it's hard to be able to look at 100 different scenarios and come up with 100 different ways to solve that problem, and feel good about it, feel like you did the right thing. Like, it's difficult, right? Some people just aren't going to be cut out for that. So,
well, you train. There's a lot of people, man, that do train. They train in black and white. These FTOs. They're like, this is what the book says. This is what we're doing. It doesn't matter what the situation is, right? And going back to the generational culture, I mean, that's kind of where all arrows point, in my opinion, because that's what they knew. That's how they trained. So that's how they're training this guy. And that's exactly how this guy is going to perform. And then when he becomes an FTO, that's exactly how he's going to train. And then the recruit that comes, I mean, it's just literally, man, it's a domino effect. You push the domino down here, man, and we've got just an unlimited zigzags of dominoes just continuing to fall. And what's frustrating is, man, like, again, I don't want to sit here and say, because I don't have all the answers. There's a lot of stuff I don't know, man. There's a lot of situations that I've never even been faced with. I've been faced with a lot in my career, a lot. But I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to handle every situation correctly, because I would be, I feel like that would be very prideful. But I think for me, if I'm describing myself, like Rob Vine used to say, doing the right things at the right time for the right reasons. You mentioned that last week.
Yeah.
Your intentions are aligned properly. Your heart is lined properly. I think then that's when you're going to have the best outcomes.
I would, 100% agree with you on that. That's the hardest thing too, is like, you mentioned like your heart is aligned. I mean, you're being compassionate. It's hard. It's hard to teach that. You can't teach that.
No,
I think I mentioned it last week. Like I can't teach somebody to be a good person. Just can't do it.
But what about, let's just say, going back to these 21-year-olds coming in, I mean, I remember so much so when I was 21, man, and I came into the profession, and dude, I made a lot of mistakes in my personal life, just because of I was pretty sheltered, and then on top of that, like, I was faced with, and I wrote an article about this not too long ago. Like, my environment was just, it wasn't for me, man. It was against me, and I knew that deep down inside of me, like, compassion, I had heart. It's always been there. But I noticed that there were times where I was faced with something, on like a call on the street, a situation, and something inside of me, like inside of my chest, was like, I look over, I've got rank on scene, I've got a corporal or a sergeant or a lieutenant even. And in my heart, I'm like, all right, I know this is what the law says that I need to do.
Or policy.
But I don't feel, again, justice will be served properly if I handle the situation that's the way it's written in black and white in the book, in our SOPs back at the station. And then I remember there's so many things running through my head. I remember one in particular, and I went to the sergeant on scene, and I said, "Hey, listen, I know what the law says we're supposed to do here, what it says in black and white, but I feel like that's not what we should do, because it's not beneficial. Like you were saying, it's not beneficial to this person that we are dealing with." And I remember that sergeant looking at me and saying, "Can't win them all, son." This is an old guy, dude, probably like 60s, just dried up, angry cop. And he said, "Go deal with it." And it's like, but then what makes it hard, going back to what you were saying, see, I would have been able to handle that the way I wanted to handle it. Okay? And then the following week, this person's family member was put in the same situation. And then you have that old crusty, grumpy sergeant come up, and he's by himself, and he handles that a totally different way. That's when you get people in an uproar, and they say, "Well, they did this here, but they didn't do this here."
How do you prevent that?
Yeah.
Special treatment, accusations.
Yes.
Yeah, or unfairness.
And to me, that's when you have people that crack down and say, "Okay, this is the way we're doing it. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Mm-hmm.
But the no ifs, ands, or buts does not apply to all situations.
No, it doesn't. So I would, and
we're not talking about murder or child molestation or heinous crimes, right?
No,
there's a line you got to draw.
Yeah, situations like that, completely different. This is just everyday routine stuff that we come across, like responding to disturbances. You can even make it about whether you're going to write somebody a ticket or not, right? Like, it's just the opportunities to have discretion, do the right thing for the right reasons at the right time. So yeah, like you could have handled that, a situation one way, somebody else comes along and handles it a completely different way. And then now somebody's mad because they didn't get the same treatment. So now we have to, decide that we're going to offer everybody the same solutions. Everybody's got the same solutions. We just arrive on scene, here to solve your problems. Would you like option A, B, or C?
Yeah.
And just streamline it across the board. We write SOPs and policies on it. It's black and white written in the big book.
There's no emotion. We're just acting like robots.
Yep. And that's where we go. In my opinion, that's kind of where we are, because right now that's how we're reacting. It's a response to something constantly, right? Because we don't like taking the heat when we mess up. We don't want to get called out when we mess up. We don't want to fall on our sword and say, yeah, we really did. We messed up on that. So we try to do everything we can to prevent it. I do think there's, obviously there's certain things that we need to do to prevent, treating people wrong.
Right.
Like we saw. But when we're talking about there's these daily opportunities to make a good impact on people's lives, maybe not choose option A, which would ruin them, their career, their family, their livelihood. And we try to be compassionate and human.
I'll give you an example. I was sitting here thinking of what that was that I was dealing with that one time. I remember what it was. So it was a minor that was driving intoxicated. But in Texas, there's like DWI and then there's DUI, or there used to be. I've been out so long I don't remember. But good thing I don't work the street anymore, right? But listen,
whatever it is, you ain't gonna be taking no action on it.
So here's the deal. So it was a minor. They were 18, 17 or 18, and they had been drinking, and DUI, minor DUIs say any detectable amount. Like, so if you smell it, it's good, right?
Yeah.
So it was a minor, and I'm sitting here like, okay, this person's. It was like they were about to graduate in May, and we were just a couple weeks from that, and that was the thing. I was like, okay, like we have a 17, 18-year-old. They've obviously had some drinks. Are they blitzed? Are they falling over? No. They're going into a criminal justice field, and what is my option? It's 3:00 in the morning. Roads are pretty empty. One could say, hey, they're putting other people's lives in danger. They need to learn from their mistake. Go ahead and slap them with that charge and let them learn from their mistake. But what does that do for them moving forward? Sometimes just an encounter with the correct kind of encounter with law enforcement is enough for somebody to, especially at a young age like that, is to say, okay, like, yikes, this is really bad. I'm putting so much in jeopardy, other people's lives. Just having a conversation with somebody and then calling their parents and saying, hey, come pick them up, versus putting them in handcuffs, taking that minor down, or, down to the jail, exposing them to all this. And then what? Like, that's a black mark on their entire life that will follow them forever. But then you have the people that say, like I said, that are on the flip side. My mind was like, I don't want to do that. But then you have the guy on his third DWI, well, you let so-and-so go, like.
Yeah, but so-and-so didn't have 2 other DWIs.
You see what I'm saying? Like, there's just so much. And with the black and white of that situation that I just explained to you, how do you handle that correctly? There's many ways. The law is black and white. So what's written in the eyes of, your supervisors, your command staff, your DAs, your legislators, that's what's right. But I feel like you got to approach things differently. You cannot always just approach it that way. What's black and white is what goes.
Yeah, I don't believe in that at all, and that's not how I police either. Yeah, I'll be the first one to tell you. I
don't either.
I don't think there's
not anymore.
Yeah. And I think that we've gotten to that position because when it does come down to, you've got 2 situations handled differently, somebody wants to complain about that. But everything was done for the right reasons. Like, the intent was good. These days we don't have leaders willing to just stand up and say, no, my officers handled it the right way.
We need a Grady Judd from Florida, that sheriff in Florida. We need, what I'm talking about?
I don't guess I follow.
Oh man, Grady Judd. I wish I had a video of him. He's that guy that gets up there. He's always on. He's doing his press conferences, and he usually has like cutouts of the suspects or the victims, and he'll put them up there. He'll be like, "Hey, this is so and so did this today, and like this is how we responded. Like he pulled a gun on my officer, and we shot him. Till the only reason we stopped shooting is because we were out of bullets. Like,
oh, that guy.
Yeah, just like that dude is a leader, man. But unfortunately, that's not widespread.
No. Here's where I think we start by hiring the right people, having the right conversations when we're looking to bring somebody into an organization, right? Not just hiring somebody just based solely on their qualifications.
Right.
Just because somebody's qualified on paper doesn't mean that they can do the job. So we start there. And then we start with building a foundation of vulnerability-based trust where the leader of the organization it immediately tells that officer, like, hey, I trust you till you give me a reason not to. Go forth and do your job and do it for the right reasons. Do the right thing. And then when we get confronted with, issues, and we have to explain ourselves, or we have to explain why an officer did something that would be considered in the spirit of the law, right? It fit for that individual at that time, we don't back down from the decisions we made. We own it. We own the good decisions and we own the bad, and we have leaders that stand up for that. And it's difficult to do because then you revert back to like the liability. Another good argument that could be made for this, in my opinion, that I see is like this big deal about pursuits nowadays. Like, there's no chase. We ain't gonna chase. We ain't gonna chase. We're only chasing for violent felonies and DWIs. Well, I don't know why you would consider chasing somebody just solely based because you think they're drunk. I would think that it would be more dangerous to chase a drunk person. But so I was working a gig this weekend, and side gig, security gig, and guy came up to me and he's like, I'm a cop out of, I don't know, somewhere. Like West Texas or something. He's like, I've been on the job for a year. He's like, how is it up here? I was like, we're doing good. I love where I work. He's like, can y'all do this? Can you do that? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, I got a good sergeant. He just tells me as long as I don't, do anything illegal or violate policy, then I'm good to go. So I just go out there and just don't violate policy. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. He's like, can you chase? And I'm like, we have a pretty good pursuit policy. It's basically says you can chase, just keep all these things in mind, right? Which you should do. Like, if you're gonna partake in that, then you should be able to articulate why you're doing it. You should be constantly aware of the dangers and the possibilities of something going south, and if something does go south, be prepared to own it. That's my perspective on it. So I told him, I said, yeah, we can chase. He's like, no, we can't chase. Can't chase unless it's a violent felony or DWI. And I'm like, well, that's unfortunate, because 9 times out of 10, somebody running from the police isn't just running just because. Yeah. But we've gotten to a position of just avoiding liability, and I think it hurts us, because now I think that drives crime up. Like, if you go through a town and that if you run from the cops and you're doing something wrong, as long as you keep running, you're good to go. Like, I don't see how that we're solving the problem. And it comes back to, we're not trusting our officers to make good decisions. Sometimes rightfully so, right?
Yeah, man.
Sometimes rightfully so. But I think if we want to start really changing and moving back in the right direction, then we have to be vulnerable. We have to trust in, the ones that are doing the job. And then when we mess up, we own it. That's all you can do. And I would like to believe that in the pursuit of building public trust, that you would get a good response out of that, instead of always trying to avoid it, like or dance around and worried about the liability of maybe just admitting that we were in the wrong. Because the thing that always gets me is people talk about liability. Like, I've done a couple webinars where some of these major, chiefs associations or something put on a webinar about pursuits or pursuit liability, or you need to do this, you need to change this policy to avoid liability. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, you're giving people a gun and a badge and the authority to walk around and temporarily suspend somebody's constitutional rights, and there's your liability right there, right out the gate. So if you're not willing to entrust in that individual from the beginning to do that, then I think you need to start evaluating the decisions you're making as the leader.
Yeah, and man, I really think that just kind of ping pongs back to, you know, who we're hiring, how we are hiring them.
How?
You know, the traditional method, you go right now, dude. And I'm not trying to call out any specific agency, but you know, we're in the DFW area, so like you're constantly crossing a city line into another one, into another. So there's cities everywhere. But I guarantee you, you go to these websites, man. I guarantee you, within just 10 agencies within our radius right here, one of the entire the entire process is going to look something like, you know, application, interview, maybe, you know, you have your physical test. A lot of people are still big on polygraphs for whatever reason. I can't stand polygraphs. That's a whole another conversation that we can have. I think they're crap.
Yeah, I don't know how you expect to build a foundation of trust when you immediately come in and tell the person who wants to join your organization, hey, you can join, but sit over here and prove to me you're not lying.
Yeah, on a machine that is not, you know, Texas. I just found this out when I got back into law enforcement. Texas, you can no longer offer polygraphs to people suspected of committing sex crimes. That's something that's new as of this last cycle. You can't even offer them. They're not admissible in court. So why are we putting them on cops? Dude, because I know for a fact, I think of 2 officers right now that are solid, good people that I know of that have taken polygraphs at agencies. They failed, quote unquote, failed the polygraph. The agency then says, come back in 6 months. Apply again. They come back in 6 months.
Next time.
They passed the polygraph. The same question. Oh, you were selling drugs 6 months ago? Now you're not?
Cool.
You're good.
Cool. Come on in.
Yeah, like what?
Sign right here.
Yeah, sign up. We're gonna put a badge on your chest because I know that was 6 months ago you were selling drugs, but now we're good.
Didn't trust you 6 months ago.
And I'm like, why is that a criteria? I can't think. You know how we interview people at our agency, how we sit them down and we have a legitimate, real face-to-face conversation just like this right here. And we talk about vulnerability-based trust. We talk about them. We talk about, you know, how they view policing. And we have these real heart-to-heart conversations. That's never happened for me in any agency that I've gone to work for.
Really?
Except for Gladewater. I will say, I say that like I've been to a lot of agencies. I guess I have been. But I know, man, I've sit in on a lot of these classes, on these hiring classes, and I know for a fact that people don't sit down and have those heart-to-hearts like we do. It's not accepted. It's just a rigid process. Like, again, herding cows. Like, okay, everybody take their tests. Everybody take their physical tests. Everybody take their polys. We need to weed these people out. We're going to have a list. And it's just, dude, you know how many good people are slipping through the cracks and how many of these guys, Christian Zapatas, NYPDs, were letting through?
A lot.
Yes.
And I think I said it last week, we tend to dismiss people really quick and immediately. You know, if you mess up on the job or you really messed up before you got on the job, nah.
Yeah. And I agree, man, there's some things you just, you know, you can't come back from. But
absolutely.
But then there's things, man, that I just feel like, again, I know how cops are. I've experienced it. I've heard the backroom conversations when they come do backgrounds. You know, I've seen how that works. I've seen how they've done me. And so going back to all this, how we are hiring people, I think the how is important because that'll change your results.
Yeah.
For the good or for the bad.
I agree.
So, anyway, listen, I think we're going to wrap it up. I think we've had a pretty good show. There's some stuff that I wanted to get to, but that I feel like we will have a pretty long conversation on. So maybe we'll table it for next time. But man, hell of a podcast. Good conversation as always. Thanks for coming in and filling in tonight. I'm actually there's several people that I've reached out to try to get on this podcast. Some really cool guests, a lot of stuff in the works. So I just want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight, for being a part of this podcast, as always, and just like I always like to tell you guys, share this, like it, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers, and just share our message far and wide, because like I say, change is going to start at tables like these, with conversations like these, with people like these. So all social media platforms, have a website, thisisfailingjustice.com. And so you guys tune in next week. Luckily, we're back on our regular schedule on Tuesdays. So thanks for joining in tonight, and we will see you guys next week.
This is Failing Justice.